From the Autoline studios, here is your host, John McElroy.
Want to thank you all for joining us on Autoline this week, where the discussion's all going to be about what's the car of the year. I'm part of the North American Car of the Year jury. There's about 48 of us throughout the United States and Canada, and I've invited two of my juror colleagues to join me today for this discussion. First up is Matt DeLorenzo with Kelley Blue Book and Larry Webster with Road and Track. Great to have the both of you here.
Good seeing you, John.
So, Larry, why don't we start out? We started out with a long list of cars.
I really struggled with that first ballot. I don't know if you guys did, but everything from that new Infiniti to the Jaguar F-Type to even the Kia Cadenza. I mean, just the breadth of quality automobiles made it very difficult to whittle them down.
And what we should explain to the audience, we 48 jurors take a vote from the big list and whittle that down to about a dozen cars and a dozen trucks. And then we have a vote on what are the three finalists, and we'll get into that a bit. But, Matt, did you have the same problem whittling this list down?
It was high-quality cars, and I think the list was so diffuse. I mean, you had everything from, like, the Mazda 3, you had a great full-size car in the Impala, you had the Corvette, you had, F-Type, you had sports cars, you had just a wide range of vehicles, all high quality, great designs, and competitive pricing, too. I mean, when you look at where a lot of these cars were, it made the decision really tough.
Larry, what are some of the things that go through your mind as you try to evaluate, okay, which is the best of the best here?
Well, what I've noticed over the past decade is a lot of the attributes used to separate automobiles, 0 to 60 time, braking, functionality, price, even quality, it's just converging, right? I mean, there's very little difference in those critical attributes now. That's like the price of getting into the business. So I look at more of the experience that the automobile provides. What's it like to drive? Do you look at it as or see something special or some flair in the design? Because really, you don't have to drive a stinker anymore or something boring. I mean, there's so much interesting stuff out there. So I look for that emotional connection with the automobile because I think that's what customers do now.
Matt, same thing. What do you go through in your mind as you evaluate?
I also look at the cars that it's competing with, and that's one of our criteria. And again, it's gotten to be very strong in terms of the level of quality, especially the interiors are fantastic. And you get in cars like even the Kia Forte and those types of cars, they're what would be entry-level cars, and they're offering near luxury levels of appointments. So like Larry said, I think it's the overall impression of the vehicle and the experience, and also what are your expectations for that car, and do they meet them or exceed them, or is there something lacking there? And I think that's where you start knocking some of them off the list when you kind of go, well, yeah, this is really a great car, but it's average for the segment.
Let's start going through some of the very vehicles that we're talking about. Let's concentrate on the three finalists, because I think we ought to dedicate the discussion to that. Maybe we can get into some of the others. So, just so the audience knows, the three finalists out of the, what did we start out with? A list that was about?
No, it was 40?
48 different vehicles. That included trucks and utilities. Right. But nonetheless, the Chevrolet Corvette, the Cadillac CTS, and the Mazda 3 emerged as the three finalists out of this big group. Let's start with the Chevrolet Corvette.
It's just an incredible car. I mean, I love the thing. It's always, the great thing about the new Corvette is you don't have to give it the excuse anymore. It was always incredible performer for the price. It always ran like a train. It could do things that 911s can't do, and they cost 30 grand more. But the critical piece it was missing was that connection, right? It tended to scare inexperienced drivers. If you found yourself not on a racetrack but on a back road, you couldn't really use the thing because it just felt just a little bit what I call disconnected. You weren't sure when you turned the wheel you were going to get this response you wanted. And 10 times out of 10, it was always fine, but it put this doubt in the back of your mind. And that was its Achilles heel, and they fixed it. And the thing is just brilliant to drive in all environments. And, of course, it looks fantastic. Have you guys seen it in white and black? Oh, the Stormtrooper model?
Stormtrooper model? I haven't heard that terminology.
Incredible. Yeah, so I love it.
Yeah. What do you think, Matt?
It's great to be listened to. Everybody complained about the interior on the car. They really fixed it. They fixed the seats. They fixed the quality of the materials. And the thing the car flatters you as a driver. It doesn't matter your skill level. You can go quickly in this car and not feel like you're gonna be caught out. And that's a tremendous testament to it. 7-speed manual transmission is great. They have the 6-speed, the 8-speed's coming, but the 6-speeds works great with the car too. So I was happy. I was riding with Tad Jutner, who was the
chief engineer.
And he was even kind of confessing to me that, I'd probably just get the base car with an automatic. That's how good that car is. You don't have to go to the Z51 to get incredible levels of performance.
But what about that performance? I mean, the 0 to 60 under 4 seconds for the base car?
Well, here's the amazing thing to me about it. It's 440 horsepower and 400 and pound-feet of torque.
60 with the Z51 package.
And that's where you get such a fast 0 to 60 speed.
It's crazy.
Cruising at 70 on the freeway, you can get about 30 miles to the gallon out of this car. That's incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, it's incredible, intelligent engineering, right? That's one thing I've always liked about that car. Was, they didn't look at what sort of the trend or the fad was in terms of technology. They just looked at what works right. And that big pushrod engine, which sounds inefficient and awful, actually turns out it has some huge advantages. One, just like you said, you don't have to spin the thing. Two, it fits in this tiny little small package, and that lets the Corvette have really terrific weight distribution and a low center of gravity, and all these other cascading advantages that nobody else has. And so what you end up with is a very uniquely American sports car that now does everything that the Europeans do and does it better and for less money. I mean, could there be a better story for this year?
The thing that I like about it, getting back to your point, is the interior. To me, that's always been the real downfall of the Corvette. Not really well done. A year ago for Autoline After Hours, we went to the GM Design Center, with your cousin Peter DeLorenzo. And that was one of the things that Ed Welburn, the head of GM Design, talked about. They were going to fix the interior on the Corvette. And boy, I think they delivered. It's got that great cut and sew, hand-stitched kind of look to it that you expect on the more exotic, much more expensive European sports cars.
Yeah, they did a terrific job with inside and out. And the car is so striking when you see it on the street. That's the other thing. There were complaints about not having round tail lights and some of the traditionalists, but once you see the car out in traffic, you kind of go, "Wow, I get it."
Yeah, I like all the technology in the cluster. Right, you can configure the thing anything you want. You can see these track pages. You can see like almost any bits of information you want tabulated. It'll do it for you, and it looks sharp and crisp, almost like it came out of Apple. And, they're going to offer this thing. Aren't they going to offer some camera system coming up that people can...
They do. They have a super high performance monitoring thing. So as you do laps at a racetrack or whatever, you can log it and you can go back and study and say, oh, I was braking too soon or getting on the gas too late or whatever it happens to be.
But they're realizing what I'm finding so fascinating these days is the domestics are recognizing better than anybody that what do you want from these cars? You want an experience, right? And probably the first car that did that better than anything else was the Boss Mustang. Wasn't the fastest thing. Everybody loved it. It sounded great. It smelled great. It drove fantastically, and it delivered all these cues that you just wanted to drive it. Now we have this Corvette that does the same thing, and you have these other things that just, at the end of the day, it has to be fun. And I think they get that, which is great.
What I love about the Corvette is how much new technology is in it. Technology that you don't find even on the most expensive supercars.
Like what?
So one thing that I find fascinating is they've got a thermocoupler in the valve stems at each 4 wheels. And then they figured out the algorithms that said, if this thermocoupler is at this temperature, then the outside diameter of the rubber is this temperature.
Yeah.
So if you do a burnout, really light them up, the computer goes, the rear tires are hotter than the front, ergo they'll stick better, so it instantly adjusts the front rear brake bias, the traction control, the stability control, and the anti-lock brakes. And they've told me that they've got the high-end European brands coming to them saying, hey, would you license this technology? And now they're debating, should we keep this as something totally unique no one else has, or should we go make some money on the technology? And from the front bumper to the back, there's all kinds of little examples of this new kind of technology they've put in the car.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really fascinating overall effort. Did you hear about the memory alloy in the louvers in the back?
No. Now, I knew that GM R&D was working on that.
Yeah, I think
that's in the vet.
The first application. So when you shut the rear hatch and you have to displace all that air, which usually resists closing the hatch, they wanted to exhaust it. So it has this little, I think, it is memory alloy. You put a current to it, it heats up, it changes something, opens these louvers, so the air has a place to go, and then you shut it and it stops. So I agree with you. A lot of those little details. Obviously, they really sweated that car, and there's a lot of heart in it. And, it's interesting, too. Over the years, we've gotten to know the Corvette team, and it's largely the same guys. I mean, what I felt seeing the C7 versus the C6 and C5 was that somebody finally let them do what they wanted to do. I think they've always known what the car needed. And so it's really quite rewarding to see them succeed and have that chance, because the one thing when I started in this business 20 years ago, and coming from the East, it was Detroit didn't have the knowledge of the Europeans or the Asians, and then come to meet all these guys, and they're brilliant, but the cars weren't so good. And so it always scratched my head, what was the disconnect? But it seems like that's removed now.
Well, this to me is the real story about the turnaround in Detroit.
Yeah.
4 years ago, they're bankrupt or, hemorrhaging money in the case of Ford. Now, they're screaming ahead. We're talking about the coolest technology, the design. It's the same people.
It's the same people.
The same people.
Yeah.
And what it shows is top management prevented these hard-working, true believers from really doing their magic and coming out with great product.
Well, the proof in the pudding is the fact that 2 out of the 3 finalists in the car are GM products or domestic products. So obviously they're getting things right, and it's to Larry's point, somebody's letting them do it, and they're showing. So.
Well, let's go to another car on the list, because we've spent a lot of time on the Corvette. Matt, I'll come to you. The Mazda 3.
I like it a lot. I think in terms of an entry-level car, it has terrific style. This new design philosophy that Mazda has was also reflected in the Mazda 6, which was another on our short list. Looks great. The interior is terrific. And it's a fun car to drive. Again, it's engaging, so it's beating your expectations for what a little entry-level 4-door sedan or 5-door hatchback should deliver.
Yeah, I really like it. I was, after hearing everybody really rave about it, I don't know if that raised my expectation. I was a little disappointed by it. I mean, I thought this is going to be fantastic. I can't wait. And I agree. It looks beautiful. It has a lot of the right details. But that class is so stacked these days. And I'm not sure you can define it into one segment. Because, I mean, would you consider a Chevy Sonic in the same class? That probably not. It's too small. But I kind of feel like they're playing in the same water, so to speak. So I feel like maybe part of it is just not peppy enough. Like the one with the stick shift, you can only get the stick shift in the low horsepower engine, and I kept thinking, like, God, another 40 horsepower, this would be awesome. Yeah. But so it's still a great car, but for me, it wasn't this awesome, great, fantastic, winner.
I have what I call the 100-yard test. I say when a car is really well done, within 100 yards, you'll know it. Yeah, and I don't know what it is. I can't put my finger on it. It's just this feel that, wow, this thing is terrific. And that's before I got out of the parking lot. When I was test driving it, it was like, dang, this car is terrific. So, and it's no one thing shines. It's the combination of it all. To me, it's like a great pair of boots or gloves or something that just seem to fit right.
Yeah, I get that in the Mazda 6 really clearly. I know exactly what you mean. You get in it, you drive a few, you're like, okay, there's something about this car. And the 3 has really close. It just seemed like compared to some of the other cars in that August group. Yeah, it was really tough for me. It wasn't.
And the guys who are giving them a real run for the money are the Koreans.
Yeah.
They're doing a terrific job in that class, and then they also deliver the value. But that was the other thing too, is I think the pricing on the 3 was really good. The one I had was really loaded, and it still came in the mid 20s. So very competitive.
By the way, did you notice there? I don't know if you played around with that infotainment system, and that's one thing we've been trying to concentrate on more. So we've been playing with these a lot, and that Mazda system is so elegantly simple. I kind of wonder if they may have something, the way that the menu structure is and the way that, It doesn't go infinitely around. Very little simple but very smart things that make that car very usable.
I like it because it's getting away from touch screens, and I hate seeing fingerprints on a touch screen in a car. You get the thing over the, and they wisely stayed away from that, and they have a very simple little, control in the middle, and it's intuitive to use, and I'm a big believer in having buttons and knobs.
And in fact, the industry is doing it. I think the industry recognized it went a step too far. And they're putting buttons and knobs back in. And I love those little rotary joystick ones.
They're great.
Yeah, although I think Acura went the other way with the new MDX. Almost no buttons.
Yeah.
Everything touchscreen, and it doesn't work that well. It
doesn't. And Honda has shown it can be nimble, and within 2 years they'll have a fix for that. They'll put some buttons back in there. Okay, next car on the list, Cadillac CTS.
Oh, man. This is what's making our job, great job. Love it, but tough, right? Because that CTS, especially that V-Sport, I couldn't say enough good things about it. It looks fantastic. It's got this sharpness and precision to it, but it still rides well and is comfortable. And the interior, to your point about what GM's doing interiors, this mix of materials and textures and shapes, it's out of the park, that car. I love it.
Yeah, to me, the technology really came across. They did on the launch, they did a terrific presentation on all the stuff that went on underneath the car, because it's even though I think it's lighter than the previous car, but it's bigger, and things like scalloping the B-pillar stampings and using different thicknesses of steel and rethinking the whole all these different components that look totally different from the ones that were on the car before. It really, in and out, is an out-of-the-box exercise. The other thing is the styling of the vehicle. Really, they had all three generations of the car, and I'll tell you, Ed Welburn's done a terrific job in evolving the art and science to where it's now really mature, elegant, and not so much in your face anymore, but it still all hangs together because you can see where that philosophy comes from.
Yeah. I think they've taken a big risk with this car. I'm like you guys. I'm knocked out by the car.
No kidding. Why?
But I think they've taken a big risk, probably appropriate, but a risk nonetheless, because this used to be a car that was sort of positioned against the BMW 3 Series. Now it's head-to-head against the 5, and they raised the price along with it. So whereas with the first generation CTS, you'd buy one in the low 30s, no problem. The test driver I had for my evaluation was $67,000. So that means they're going to leave a lot of CTS buyers behind with this big of a price jump. Now, they've got the ATS, which was our car of the year last year. But how well will the new one do being priced so much more than the model it replaced?
Well, to your point exactly about where it sat before, it really straddled between the 3 and the 5 because it was larger than a 3. Mm-hmm. So you could pay a 3 Series price and get almost 5 Series packaging. Now they're going head-to-head. But I think in terms of the performance and the quality of the materials, and you look at what people are commanding for in the prices that they're getting in that category, I think they'll be fine. I don't think they're going to look at it as being their volume car. That's why they have the ATS now.
They may not, but what do you think? Will BMW buyers be attracted to this car?
This is such a great question in that segment, because what do people want in that segment? They want functionality, they want performance, they want design, but really they probably want to show other people they have money.
Right.
And does a Cadillac convey that at this point? And, I know they've taken the long game, and this car is brilliant. And it's going to change a lot of minds. Their challenge is going to be to get people to drive them. But I struggle with that because, take, for example, the Hyundai Genesis, right? Did you want to be seen as buying smarter than the BMW guy because you got all the stuff but for 15 grand less? Or did you want to be seen as a guy who could afford the BMW? And I don't know where that is. I think they'll do pretty well with this car because it looks so fantastic. And I think the Europeans, their eye been off the ball a little bit. The cars are good all around, but they don't have that specialness to them that I think they need to have, especially at that price level, and this Cadillac does.
They haven't had the kind of competition that Cadillac's going to put to them now.
No, it's incredible. Would you have imagined this 5-10 years ago? Probably not. And the other thing I think that GM's doing really well are the simple things. I noticed it in the ATS and the CTS. Like, they keep the dash low and small and unobtrusive. So you have these terrific sight lines, that art and science design language that they developed, right? You know where the ends of the fenders are. And it sounds so basic, but you guys know how few car companies are getting that right these days. Like, the belt lines are getting so high, you're feeling more hemmed in. And, here these comes around. I feel it's a great breath of fresh air. Excuse me.
Yeah.
Hey, look, as you guys know, there's a truck component to this award, too. We're going to shoot a whole nother show on who we think is the best truck out there. But let me just tell the audience, the finalists for that are the Acura MDX, the Chevrolet Silverado, yet another GM product, and help me out here, guys.
The Jeep Cherokee.
And the Jeep Cherokee, yeah, how could I forget? So I'm going to put you guys on the spot. What's going to be the truck of the year?
Oh, I mean, I think the Silverado, the question is, does it deserve to be? I'd be curious to see, Matt, what you thought about the whole group. I didn't find that there was one, like with the cars, I knew I had 3 or 4 easy finalists.
Right.
The trucks was a little trickier.
It was a little bit of a struggle, but I'm going to go with the Cherokee myself. I think there are some things in there like the 9-speed transmission. It was a car that I think you have to warm up to the looks on.
Yes, you do.
I saw it a year ago, and I'm going, I don't know. But after I had a chance to drive it and see it out on the open road and experience it, I liked the space. It was roomy and comfortable, and yet it's a real Jeep in terms of its off-road ability.
Yeah, but it feels so big and ponderous. It's like,
yeah,
there doesn't feel like there's any difference between that and a Grand Cherokee, which is a nicer, quieter car to me.
Yeah. Well, but there's going to be a big price difference.
I guess there'll be a price difference, but it seems to have grown. I mean, I hate to be one of those guys that just is in love with the old one for its basicness,
right?
And, but
it's a totally different vehicle from that.
To me, it totally surprised me. I went in, I didn't like the looks of the car. I remembered the old one, and I thought, we'll see where this is. I was knocked out. It's another 100-yard car for me. And, you're complaining that it's kind of like the Grand Cherokee. I think the people who buy the Cherokee are going to go, wow, I got all the quietness, the suppleness, 3 different all-wheel drive systems that you can choose from, the capability of taking it off-road for a lot less money. So I'll bet it does terrific. I'll bet it does just
so
terrific.
So you think where do you sit? Do you think it's more deserving than the Silverado?
No, because I was knocked out by the Acura MDX.
Oh, you were?
No, I love the MDX. I loved it. And I'll tell you why. Because that vehicle now rides like a mid-60s or 70s full-size American sedan. And no, don't go taking it off-road. Don't take it through a slalom. Just put your hand on the wheel, lean back, and enjoy the ride, because that thing's comfortable. It's the combination of the foam in the seat back, the connection of the body to the chassis, the suspension. I tell you, those guys at Honda nailed what a big American sedan used to feel like 30, 40 years ago.
Boy, that's so tough to do, because you could say the same thing about the Explorer and the Flex, but they feel almost too lazy. Right? In this modern era, we should have both.
Lazy.
But we should have both that Woodward frequency, and we should also have some precision at the same time.
Right? This is why he's at Road and Track, right? Yeah. Okay, real quick, we're sort of getting down to the end. Matt, I'm going to start with you. Let's go back to the cars. Predictions. What's going to win the North American Car of the Year award? Corvette.
Yeah, it's a dramatic change, and then when you look at it against any other sports car, the value is there for the performance. It's just hands down.
That's a lock. He's right. Yeah, absolutely.
Corvette. I agree. It's interesting, though. You said that you didn't like the Mazda 3 so much, so it would not have been one of your finalists. Can you say?
Yeah, I think. I don't want to say it's a great car. It's a terrific car. Just compared to some of the other finalists that, to me, are like these huge knockouts. It wasn't to that level. And that segment is, and like I said, I don't know what exact segment. They probably have some ultra mid, something premium half. You know how they stack those things up. To me, it swims in a huge, huge pond. And there's a lot of good cars, you know, the Focus, the Fiesta, the Sonic, you know.
Speaking of the Fiesta, the ST version, the high performance version, came out this year.
Yeah.
That was my best 100-yard car. I'm telling you, and it didn't make our list at all.
Right.
Yeah.
And in fact, they did some enhancements to the full Fiesta line. I guess none of us were able to get in and drive it, and that's probably a reason why it didn't make the list. But that ST, man, that was one of the true surprises of all the new cars that had come out.
Yeah. I think the other interesting thing that happened in terms of my own voting is I had the tightest distribution of points. There were so many cars I wanted to give some points to that normally you get one or two favorites and you give it like a 10 or an 8 or a 9. I didn't do that this year because I packed a bunch of points right around 4 or 5 different cars because I couldn't make up my mind.
Yeah, and we should just briefly explain to the audience, if you don't know, we each get 25 points, and we have to vote all the points, and we can give no more than 10 points to any one car. So that forces it. But I'm like you. I've got points all over the map because there were so many good vehicles.
Yeah.
Well, hey, guys, we're going to have to wrap this up. Great discussion.
Thank you.
We'll know very shortly if we're right, if the Corvette won North American Car of the Year. But Matt DeLorenzo with Kelley Blue Book, Larry Webster from Road and Track. Really want to thank you guys for coming in and talking all about these cars.
Thanks,
Thank you very much.
Yeah. And I want to thank all of you for having tuned in.